In someone to do a polygraph test, is that on you?
That's not just on me, but on everyone. That's what I asked for. I asked for that so early on, and there's not many places that do it in Canada, so they're flying somebody in.
Why do you think you need to do that? Do you think they don't believe you?
I think their side of the family doesn't believe me, and I just want to clear it up for everyone. Clear it up for everyone, not just the people online making crazy accusations.
When someone takes a polygraph test, we expect one of two outcomes. They pass or they fail. But what happens when someone takes the test and no one sees the results? In May 2025, 6-year-old Lily Sullivan and her 4-year-old brother, Jack, vanished from their rural Nova Scotia home without a trace. Their stepfather, Daniel Martel, quickly volunteered for a polygraph test, a decision that initially seemed to demonstrate his innocence. "I took the test, and they were good in my favor," he later claimed to reporters. But here's the thing, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police never confirmed if the test was administered, let alone what it revealed. No evidence of the results was ever made public, and in the shadows of that silence, 2 children remain missing. Why would a stepfather rush to clear his name with a polygraph test, then declare he passed it, while law enforcement remains conspicuously silent? Why would a mother leave the search area when her children are missing, something I've never witnessed in my 15 years covering missing persons cases? Tonight, we're going to examine the disturbing patterns in this case that simply don't add up. Welcome to Last Seen Stories, where we investigate the cases that haunt communities and the questions that authorities won't answer. I'm your host, and tonight we're diving into one of the most baffling missing children cases I've encountered. Before we continue, take a second to comment where you're watching from today. Your engagement helps us reach more people who might have information about these missing children. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button to join our investigative community as we work to bring attention to cases that deserve it. Now, let's piece together what happened to Lily and Jack Sullivan. Lansdowne Station sits in Pictou County, Nova Scotia, 140 kilometers northeast of Halifax. It's the kind of place where everyone knows their neighbors, where dense woods surround scattered homes, and where, until May 2nd, 2025, nothing truly terrible had happened in recent memory. That changed when a 911 call came in at approximately 10:30 a.m. Daniel Martel and Malehia Brooks Murray reported that Lily, age 6, and Jack, age 4, had disappeared from their home on Gerlach Road. According to their initial statement, the children had slipped out through a sliding back door while the parents were occupied with their 16-month-old baby. The RCMP arrived within 30 minutes. By noon, a search was underway. By evening, the story had reached national news. Lily Sullivan, a bright-eyed, cheerful first grader with brown hair often worn in pigtails. Jack Sullivan, a curious 4-year-old with an infectious laugh who followed his big sister everywhere. According to their mother, both children were friendly and talkative. Neither had any developmental issues that might have contributed to wandering off, contrary to early social media rumors. The area surrounding their home is rugged terrain, steep hills, dense brush, and thick forest. If 2 small children had wandered into those woods, the danger was immediate and severe. But as the investigation unfolded, a crucial question emerged. Did these children actually wander away, or was something far more sinister at play? The sliding back door, the busy parents, the wandering children, it sounded plausible on the surface. But investigators know that the most obvious explanation isn't always the truth. And as we're about to see, nothing about this case follows the expected pattern. To understand the Sullivan case, we need to understand the family at its center. Daniel Martel had been in a relationship with Malehia Brooks Murray for approximately 3 years when the children disappeared. He was not the biological father of Lily and Jack, but had been their stepfather during this period. Together, Martel and Brooks Murray had a 16-month-old baby. The family lived in a relatively isolated home on Gerlach Road, surrounded by woods, a setting that would later become central to both the search operation and the theories about what happened. From the beginning, there was a stark contrast in how the parents presented themselves publicly. Martel became the face of the family's ordeal, appearing frequently in media interviews. He was vocal about his cooperation with authorities, emphasizing that he had provided his cell phone, bank statements, and other personal information to the RCMP. Brooks Murray, meanwhile, made an emotional plea early in the investigation, but soon became notably absent from public view. And here's where we encounter our first major red flag. Within days of the children's disappearance, Brooks Murray reportedly left Martel and moved out of the county with their baby. Let me be clear about how unusual this is. In thousands of missing children cases I've reviewed, I have never, not once, seen a mother leave the search area while her children are still missing. Typically, parents of missing children remain fixated on the search location. They want to be present for any developments. They become deeply involved in search efforts. They stay close to law enforcement. Brooks Murray's decision to leave raises troubling questions about the family dynamic and what she might have known or suspected. Did she leave because she feared for her safety? Did she know something about Martel that caused her to distance herself? Or was there another explanation entirely? This unusual action creates the first crack in the foundation of what would become an increasingly suspicious narrative. Let's break down the timeline leading up to and immediately following the disappearance, because the 48 hours before Lily and Jack vanished contain critical inconsistencies. According to Martel himself, the children were not in school on Wednesday, May 1st, due to a professional development day. They also weren't in school on Thursday, May 1st or Friday, May 2nd, allegedly because they were sick. This means the children had not been seen by teachers, school staff, or classmates for 48 hours before they were reported missing. This gap is significant in missing persons investigations, as it widens the window during which something could have happened. The last confirmed sighting of the children outside the home was captured on surveillance footage on May 1st, showing them with their family in New Glasgow, Nova Scotia. After that, nothing. According to the official narrative, on the morning of May 2nd, sometime between 9:30 and 10 a.m., Lily and Jack were moving around the house while Martel and Brooks Murray were occupied with their baby. At some point during this period, the children allegedly slipped out through a sliding back door that had been left partially open. Martel claims he realized the children were missing around 10:15 a.m., immediately began searching the property, and then took an ATV to search the surrounding area. The 911 call was placed at approximately 10:30 a.m. But here's where things don't add up. When investigators attempted to piece together the children's movements in the hours before their disappearance, they hit a wall. There was no surveillance footage from the home. No neighbors reported seeing the children playing outside that morning. The boot prints found near the home couldn't be definitively linked to the children. Most crucially, there's that 48-hour period where the children were allegedly sick at home, away from the watchful eyes of teachers and other community members who might have noticed if something was wrong. As an investigative reporter, this timeline raises immediate red flags. Extended absences from school immediately before a disappearance create a dangerous window where abuse or harm can occur undetected. And when children truly wander off, it typically happens in a moment, not after days of isolation. The search for Lily and Jack was massive by rural Canadian standards. More than 160 trained search and rescue personnel combed the dense woods surrounding the Sullivan home. Drones captured aerial footage of the terrain. Helicopters with thermal imaging technology scanned for heat signatures. Dog teams attempted to pick up scents. The search area eventually expanded to cover 5.5 square kilometers of rugged wilderness, steep hills, thick underbrush, and forests that would be challenging for adults to navigate, let alone 2 small children. One potential lead emerged early. Boot prints were discovered near the home and along a nearby pipeline trail. However, despite intensive efforts to follow these tracks, they ultimately led nowhere conclusive. After 6 days of searching, on May 8, 2025, the RCMP made a decision that shocked many. They significantly scaled back the search operation. While they maintained that specific areas would continue to be investigated, the large-scale ground search was effectively over. This decision was officially attributed to the lack of new evidence and the comprehensive coverage already achieved. But experienced investigators know a cold truth about missing children cases. When searches end this quickly, it often means authorities have reason to believe the children aren't in the search area at all. When children truly wander off, searches typically continue until there's recovery. Whether that means finding the children alive or recovering remains. The decision to scale back after less than a week suggests the RCMP may have been shifting their focus from a search and rescue operation to a criminal investigation. Meanwhile, investigators were conducting interviews with over 50 individuals, collecting surveillance footage from local businesses and residences, and analyzing physical evidence. Yet despite these efforts, they maintained there was no evidence of abduction, a statement that would take on greater significance as the case unfolded. At the center of this case lies one of its most contentious elements, the polygraph test. For those unfamiliar, a polygraph, often called a lie detector test, measures physiological indicators like blood pressure, pulse, respiration, and skin conductivity while the subject answers a series of questions. The theory is that deceptive answers will produce measurable physiological responses different from truthful ones. Early in the investigation, Daniel Martel made a public statement that caught many people's attention. He volunteered to take a polygraph test. On the surface, this appeared to be the action of an innocent man, eager to clear his name and refocus attention on finding the children. "I've given them my phone, my bank statements, everything," Martel told reporters. "I've got nothing to hide. I'll take a polygraph right now if it helps find Lily and Jack." In Canadian investigations, polygraphs are handled differently than in American cases. The RCMP typically flies in specialists to administer these tests, as polygraph examiners are limited in Canada. Results are kept confidential, and importantly, they're not admissible in Canadian courts due to reliability concerns. If you're finding this analysis valuable, hit that like button and share this video to help others understand this case. Your engagement helps us reach more people who might have information about Lily and Jack. Days after his initial offer, Martel claimed he had taken the test. Later, he would tell local media that he had passed the polygraph, suggesting he had been cleared of suspicion. But here's the critical point. The RCMP never confirmed whether the test was actually administered, let alone what it showed. This created a situation where the public had only Martel's word about both the existence and outcome of the test. And that word stood in stark contrast to the continuing investigation. Daniel Martel's media appearances throughout the investigation reveal a pattern worth examining. In his first statements to reporters, Martel appeared visibly distressed, emphasizing his desire to find the children. He described searching the property on his ATV and cooperating fully with authorities. But as days passed, his messaging shifted subtly. "You really can't point fingers at me anymore," he said in one particularly telling interview. This statement, made before any evidence had exonerated him, suggests a preoccupation with his own innocence rather than the fate of the children. Martel consistently pushed the theory that the children had been abducted, despite the RCMP's statement that there was no evidence supporting this conclusion. "Somebody took them," he insisted to reporters. "They wouldn't just wander off like that." This contradicted not only the RCMP's assessment, but also the initial explanation that the children had slipped out through the sliding door while the parents were distracted. Body language experts and statement analysts have noted several concerning patterns in Martel's interviews. His tendency to use distancing language when discussing the children, his focus on his own actions rather than the children's welfare, and his repeated attempts to shape the narrative around abduction. These patterns mirror those seen in other cases where individuals who should be focused on finding missing loved ones instead become fixated on controlling the narrative and deflecting suspicion. The infamous cases of Scott Peterson, Chris Watts, and Josh Powell all featured similar behavior patterns from family members who later proved to be involved in the disappearances they were publicly lamenting. While this alone isn't evidence of guilt, it represents another inconsistency in a case already riddled with them. The controversy surrounding Martel's polygraph test extends beyond his claim of having passed it. The RCMP's refusal to confirm details about the test follows standard protocol. Polygraph results are considered investigative tools, not evidence. As mentioned earlier, they're not admissible in Canadian courts, and law enforcement typically doesn't disclose such information to protect ongoing investigations. But this silence created a vacuum that was quickly filled with speculation. What many people don't understand about polygraphs is that the examination begins the moment you walk into the room, not when you're connected to the machine. Trained examiners observe behavior, note inconsistencies in statements, and watch for signs of deception throughout the entire process. A polygraph is never just about the physiological readings. It's about the totality of the subject's behavior before, during, and after questioning. In other missing children cases, polygraph results have sometimes been strategically leaked or confirmed when they help advance the investigation. In the 1993 Poly class abduction case in California, police quickly announced that the father had passed his polygraph, effectively removing him from suspicion and allowing resources to focus elsewhere. The RCMP's decision to maintain complete silence about Martel's test could indicate several possibilities. Perhaps the test was never conducted. Perhaps the results were inconclusive. Perhaps the results contradicted Martel's public claim of passing, or perhaps the results, while potentially clearing him on specific questions, raised new avenues of investigation that police didn't want to compromise. Whatever the truth, the polygraph controversy remains at the heart of this case. A test that should have provided clarity, instead deepened the mystery. As we piece together the Sullivan case, several red flags and anomalies emerge that differentiate it from typical missing children investigations. First, and most striking, is Brooks Murray's departure from the family home shortly after the disappearance. As previously noted, this behavior is virtually unheard of in cases of missing children. When parents separate during such crises, it's often because one parent suspects the other's involvement. Second is the lack of maternal involvement in the search efforts. While Martel was frequently seen participating in searches and speaking to media, Brooks Murray's public presence diminished rapidly after her initial emotional plea. This absence is particularly unusual for a mother of missing children. Third are the timeline discrepancies in the 48 hours before the disappearance. The children's absence from school created a dangerous window where their whereabouts and welfare couldn't be verified by anyone outside the home. In retrospect, this period may have been crucial to understanding what really happened. Fourth is the complete lack of evidence supporting the wandering off theory, despite one of the most thorough searches in recent Nova Scotia history. No clothing fragments, no personal items, no definitive footprints beyond the immediate vicinity of the home. Children who wander typically leave some trace, especially in muddy, wooded terrain. Fifth is the RCMP's statement that there was no evidence of abduction, which, when paired with their intensive investigation of the family, creates a troubling implication. If the children weren't abducted by strangers and didn't simply wander off, what remains is the possibility of family involvement. Multiple experts have noted the unusual aspects of this case. Michelle Giannis, an associate professor of criminal justice at the University of Louisiana Lafayette, called it an anomaly that doesn't meet a lot of the normal criteria for what we would see in these types of cases. Michael Arfield, a criminologist at Western University in Ontario, went further, calling the case unprecedented and noting that it's highly unlikely for two siblings who live together to vanish when a parent is not involved. When we compare this to other missing children cases, the pattern deviations become even more apparent. In cases where children truly wander off, they're typically found within 24 hours and rarely travel more than a few kilometers. In cases of stranger abduction, there's usually some evidence, witness sightings, vehicle descriptions, or surveillance footage. The Sullivan case fits neither pattern, leaving us with troubling questions about what really happened on May 2, 2025. The handling of the Sullivan case has drawn both criticism and analysis from experts in missing persons investigations and criminology. Statistics on similar disappearances tell us something important. When two siblings vanish simultaneously without evidence of abduction, family involvement is statistically the most likely explanation. This isn't an accusation. It's a data-driven reality that investigators must consider. In comparable American cases, the FBI's Child Abduction Rapid Deployment CARD team would typically be deployed within 24 hours. These specialized units bring extensive resources and expertise, including behavioral analysts trained to detect deception in family members' statements and actions. If this had been a U.S. case, the FBI Child Abduction Task Force would have been there by day 2, noted one former FBI agent familiar with such investigations. They are the best of the best. If my kid was missing, I'd want them on the case. The Canadian approach, while thorough in many respects, differs in key ways. The RCMP handles such cases with their own protocols, which sometimes prioritize search operations over investigative techniques in the early stages. This isn't necessarily wrong, just different, and it can lead to varying outcomes. Criminologists have also pointed to the investigation's communication strategy as potentially problematic. The limited information released to the public, while intended to protect the integrity of the investigation, may have hampered community assistance efforts. Police can't be everywhere, so they rely in cases like this on the eyes and ears of the public, explained Arfield. That needs to be a two-way street in terms of information. However, law enforcement veterans counter that revealing too much too soon can compromise an investigation, especially if family members are under scrutiny. Suspects who know what evidence police have or don't have can adjust their stories accordingly. The balance between transparency and investigative integrity is delicate, and in the Sullivan case, the scales tipped heavily toward caution, leaving the public with more questions than answers. As with any unsolved case, theories about what happened to Lily and Jack range from the officially endorsed to the wildly speculative. Let's examine the main possibilities. Theory 1, the children wandered off as initially suggested. This is the official narrative supported by the RCMP's search operations. Under this theory, Lily and Jack slipped out the sliding door and became lost in the woods. The lack of recovered evidence is attributed to the vast, difficult terrain and the possibility that wildlife may have disturbed any remains. The primary problem with this theory is the comprehensive nature of the search. With over 160 personnel, dogs, drones, and helicopters covering 5.5 square kilometers, the likelihood of finding no trace whatsoever is extremely low. Theory 2. The children were abducted by a stranger. This was the theory Martel himself promoted, despite the RCMP's statement that no evidence supported it. For this to be true, someone would have had to access the relatively remote property, take 2 children without leaving evidence, and escape without being seen by neighbors or captured on any surveillance footage. The statistical rarity of stranger abductions, especially of multiple children from a home, makes this theory problematic without supporting evidence. Theory 3. Family involvement. This theory suggests that one or both parents know more about the children's disappearance than they've admitted. The unusual family dynamics, timeline discrepancies, and Martel's behavior have fueled this theory among online sleuths and some community members. While no charges have been filed and no definitive evidence has been publicly presented implicating family members, the statistical likelihood and pattern matching to other family-involved disappearances keep this theory in active discussion. Social media has both helped and hindered the investigation. While platforms like TikTok and Facebook have spread awareness about the missing children, they've also become breeding grounds for unfounded rumors and conspiracy theories. Claims about parties at the home before the disappearance, allegations about the parents' lifestyles, and unverified sightings have all complicated the RCMP's work. Recent developments have been limited. The RCMP continues to follow up on tips, which now number more than 355. Targeted searches have resumed in specific areas around Gairloch Road, suggesting that new information may have emerged, though authorities haven't disclosed what prompted these renewed efforts. As of today, Lily and Jack Sullivan remain missing. Their disappearance has left an indelible mark on Lansdowne Station and communities throughout Nova Scotia. The community response continues to be robust. Volunteers still organize independent searches on weekends. Local businesses display posters with the children's photos. A memorial of flowers, stuffed animals, and notes grows outside the RCMP detachment in Stellarton. The family's current situation reflects the fractures that appeared early in the case. Brooks Murray remains separated from Martel and has largely avoided public appearances in recent months. Martel continues to live in the family home and occasionally speaks to media, maintaining his innocence and frustration with the lack of progress. Media coverage has waned, as is unfortunately common in missing persons cases that extend beyond a few weeks without major developments. This diminished attention makes community-driven awareness efforts all the more crucial. Public criticism of the investigation has intensified, with many questioning why an Amber Alert wasn't issued initially and why the large-scale search ended after only 6 days. The RCMP has defended its decisions, citing protocols that reserve Amber Alerts for confirmed abductions and pointing to the thoroughness of the search before it was scaled back. This case needs more attention, not just for Lily and Jack, but for every child who goes missing in circumstances that don't fit the expected pattern. Subscribe now and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update on this or similar cases. Your support helps us continue shining a light on cases that might otherwise fade from public consciousness. The disappearance of Lily and Jack Sullivan leaves us with haunting questions that deserve answers. Why would 2 children vanish without a trace from their rural home? Why would their mother leave the search area? Why would the RCMP neither confirm nor deny the results of a polygraph test that could clarify so much? And perhaps most importantly, why, after intensive searches, hundreds of tips, and thousands of investigative hours, do we seem no closer to the truth than on that first day? The evidence, or lack thereof, presents a troubling picture. No signs of the children in the woods, despite exhaustive searching. No evidence of abduction, despite Martel's insistence. A 48-hour window before the disappearance where the children were isolated from outside contact. A family unit that fractured immediately after the crisis began. I've covered hundreds of missing children cases, and the patterns here simply don't align with cases where children are eventually found safe. The polygraph results could answer so many questions, not just about what happened to Lily and Jack, but about the integrity of the investigation itself. Their continued secrecy only fuels speculation and delays justice. We must remember that at the center of this mystery are two innocent children who deserve to be found, whether to be brought home safely or laid to rest with dignity. Lily, with her pigtails and bright smile. Jack, with his curiosity and devotion to his big sister. They are more than case files or headlines. They are children whose stories deserve resolution. As the investigation continues, we can only hope that someone comes forward with information that breaks this case open, that one tip, one witness, one piece of evidence will finally reveal what happened on Gerlach Road on May 2nd, 2025. Let me know your theories in the comments below. Sometimes the fresh perspectives of our community see connections that others miss. And if you have information about this case, contact the RCMP immediately. For Lily and Jack Sullivan, the search for truth continues.